If you want to find the most advanced toolmakers on Earth, you do not search the globe randomly. You look at specific, tightly packed geographic clusters. You look at Silicon Valley, London, or Shenzhen. Human technological advancement is not evenly distributed. It is regional. We assume this level of geographical inequality is strictly a human construct. We assume that if you walk into a forest, every single animal of the same species shares the exact same level of intelligence, driven by the exact same genetic code. We are completely wrong. In the Corvid world, intelligence is not genetic. It is cultural. And because it is cultural, it is bound by the exact same laws of geography, trade routes, and isolation as human empires. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why biological knowledge hubs rise, how they fall, and what happens when the most intelligent birds on the planet abandon the forest and start targeting your neighborhood instead. Today, we are zooming out. We are mapping the canopy. We will uncover the existence of biological Silicon Valleys, highly localized regional tech hubs, where specific flocks hold strict monopolies on advanced engineering. We will track the nomadic merchants who smuggle stolen technology across invisible borders, and witness what happens when an entire avian empire forgets its technology and falls into a biological dark age. To understand these biological tech hubs, you have to look at the research of evolutionary anthropologists mapping the islands of New Caledonia. New Caledonia is a French territory in the South Pacific, and it is home to one of the most studied bird species on the planet, the New Caledonian crow. These birds do not just use tools, they manufacture them. They cut, shape, and engineer plant material into functional instruments designed to extract grubs from inside tree bark. This is not instinct, this is learned craft. And the specific designs of those tools change dramatically depending on where on the island the crow was born and raised. When researchers tracked tool usage across the island, they did not find a uniform distribution of skill. They found stark, invisible borders. They found literal biological monopolies. Scientists identified distinct geographic regions, each with its own exclusive tool design. In the southern regions of the island, crows produce wide, untapered tools. Basic, blunt instruments that get the job done, but only just. Move north, and the designs become more structured, more refined. But in the northern canopy zones, researchers found something that stopped them cold. A tool so geometrically precise, so deliberately engineered, that it forced the scientific community to completely reconsider what non-human intelligence actually looks like. This is the stepped-cut pandanus tool. Crows in the northern hub do not simply tear a leaf and jab it into a hole. They cut the pandanus plant, a broad-leafed tropical shrub, in a series of deliberate, angular steps, creating a tapered hook with a barbed tip. The geometry of this cut is not random. It follows a specific, repeatable pattern that maximizes grip on a grub inside a narrow tunnel. It is engineering, and it is exclusive to a specific geographic zone of the island. Here is what makes this extraordinary. The crows across these different regions are genetically identical. There is no DNA difference between a southern crow making a blunt stick and a northern crow engineering a stepped hook. The gap between them is not biological. It is educational. It is cultural. It is the exact same gap that separates a child raised in a remote village from one raised in the middle of a university city. Same raw hardware, completely different software. Researchers confirmed this by conducting cross-fostering experiments, raising chicks from one region in the company of adults from another. The chicks adopted the tool designs of their foster community, not their birth region. The technology is transmitted through observation and practice, not through genes, which means it can be lost, it can be stolen, and it can spread. If a human is born in Silicon Valley, they are surrounded by engineers, and they learn to code. If a crow is born in a northern canopy hub, it is surrounded by biological engineers, and it learns advanced geometry. But how does the technology spread across the borders? In the ancient human world, technology spread through the Silk Road. Merchants and nomads carried gunpowder, paper, and mathematics across borders, disrupting isolated empires. The Corvid network has its own Silk Road, and it relies on a specific class of bird, the nomadic juvenile. When a young crow has not yet found a territory to claim, it becomes a wanderer. It travels massive distances across the island, crossing the invisible borders of the tech hubs. And sometimes it takes stolen technology with it. Young, non-breeding crows, birds that have not yet settled into a fixed home range, are highly mobile. They are not tied to a nest, not defending a patch of canopy, and not bound to a single flock's knowledge base. This freedom of movement makes them the living data cables of the Corvid world. A juvenile crow that wanders from a low-skill southern region into a northern engineering hub does not arrive and immediately outcompete the locals. It watches. Corvids are extraordinarily observant learners. Scientists call this social learning, the ability to acquire a new behavior simply by watching another individual perform it. The juvenile watches the master cut the pandanus leaf in precise angular steps. It watches the barbed tip being shaped. It watches the extraction technique. And then, when it eventually moves on, back south into a mid-island region or into entirely new territory, it carries that design with it. When this wandering crow arrives in a technologically underdeveloped region and begins manufacturing stepped-cut tools, something cascades through the local flock. The local juveniles observe the new technique. They practice it. They begin producing their own versions. Within a generation, a tool design that was once the exclusive monopoly of a distant northern hub has propagated into a new area of the Forestone open source knowledge, distributed through the movement of a single bird. This is not a theoretical model. Researchers studying cultural transmission in New Caledonian crows have documented exactly this kind of geographic spread, with tool design variations shifting at the edges of known regional boundaries, precisely where nomadic individuals are most likely to cross between zones. These nomadic juveniles are not anomalies. They are the infrastructure. They are the fiber optic cables running between isolated servers. Without them, each regional hub stays locked inside its own knowledge bubble, its monopoly intact, but its reach frozen. The smugglers bring the tech, and the local economy booms. But cultural knowledge is incredibly fragile. If knowledge is not written down on a hard drive, what happens if the teachers disappear? After the fall of the Roman Empire, humanity lost the recipe for concrete. We lost advanced aqueduct engineering. Because the engineers died, and the knowledge was not passed on, Europe plunged into the Dark Ages. The exact same catastrophic loss of knowledge happens in these biological Silicon Valleys. Because Corvid technology is not genetic, it relies entirely on the master-apprentice relationship. An adult must teach the youth. The juvenile must watch, practice, and be corrected. This process takes time, and it requires overlap. The experienced maker must still be alive and active while the next generation is young enough to learn. Remove that overlap, and the chain breaks. What happens if a localized disease, a predator surge, or a brutal winter wipes out the elder generation of a specific tech hub? The biological patent is lost, not weakened, not diluted, erased. The surviving juveniles in that hub never completed their apprenticeship. They watched partial demonstrations. They have fragments. The general idea of cutting a leaf, perhaps, but not the precise geometry of the stepped cut, not the specific angle of the barb. Without the master present to model the completed design, the juveniles default to what they can figure out independently. And what they can figure out independently is almost always a cruder, less effective version of the original. Researchers studying tool-using species have identified this collapse pattern across multiple animal populations. When experienced individuals are removed from a group, whether through hunting, habitat loss, or natural mortality, the complexity of cultural behaviors drops in the following generation. The group does not go extinct, it survives. But it survives at a lower technological level. It reverts toward what scientists call a Stone Age baseline. Simple, low-yield foraging with basic or no tools. This is the tragic arithmetic of cultural transmission. Every single generation must successfully receive the full knowledge package from the generation before it. There is no backup. There is no archive. There is no cloud storage. The technology exists only in the practiced movements of a living bird's body. And when that body is gone before the transfer is complete, the tech dies with it. A juvenile crow that grows up in the shadow of a collapsed hub does not know what it has lost. It walks past a rotting pandanus tool on the forest floor, the last physical artifact of a once dominant engineering tradition, and has no idea what it is looking at. It walks away, and the monopoly, built over multiple generations of careful teaching, is gone. This is not a metaphor. This is the documented reality of how cultural knowledge behaves in non-human animal populations, and it forces a deeply uncomfortable question. If high intelligence requires constant, unbroken generational teaching to maintain itself, how stable is any knowledge system, human or animal, that depends entirely on the survival of its teachers? The rise and fall of these Canopy Empires proves that crows operate on a level far beyond standard animal behavior. They build hubs, they guard patents, and they suffer from knowledge collapses. But the forests of the world are shrinking. The greatest tech hub on the planet is no longer the jungle canopy. It is the human city. Crows have realized that human suburbs are packed with high-calorie food, discarded materials, and complex architecture that rewards problem-solving at every turn. And they are abandoning the forest to hack our infrastructure. Scientists call this process scene urbanization, the voluntary migration of wild animal populations into urban environments, driven by the superior resource availability those environments offer. For corvids, this is not a desperate retreat from a destroyed habitat. It is a calculated upgrade. The city is a richer, denser, more varied environment than the forest, and crows are cognitively equipped to exploit it in ways that most wild animals simply cannot. In urban environments, crows have been documented using traffic patterns to crack open nuts, placing hard-shelled food on road crossings and waiting for cars to drive over them, then retrieving the contents during red lights. They have been observed using human tools left in public spaces. They cache food in consistent, remembered locations across large city grids, demonstrating spatial memory that rivals or exceeds that of many mammals. They recognize individual human faces, remember who has threatened them, and pass that information to other crows through social networks. The same social learning infrastructure that drives tool culture transmission in the forest, now applied to the suburbs. The urban crow is not a weakened, displaced version of the forest crow. It is an upgraded one. It has traded the narrow, competitive canopy monopoly system for an open access, resource-rich urban environment where its problem-solving ability can operate without the constraints of territorial scarcity. The city, for a corvid, is an infinite hardware library with no checkout limit, and they are learning it fast. The Paranoia Protocol has concluded. We now understand their intelligence. But what happens when that hyper-intelligence organizes into a criminal syndicate? When crows move into the human suburbs, they do not act like wild animals. They act like the mafia. They establish highly organized, violent protection arrangements. If you leave peanuts on your porch, you are not feeding the birds. You are paying a cartel tax. And if you miss a payment, they retaliate. They destroy property, they harass pets, and they violently police the airspace above your home. We are officially entering Phase 2 of the Corvid network. To see exactly how these suburban cartels operate and the violent consequences of missing your weekly payment, click the video on your screen right now. You do not want to owe the cartel. I will see you in there.